When was the last time that you did something exactly the same way you did it before? How did it feel? We tend to think that we are experts and that we are rebels and people who want to change the world. But when it comes to daily decisions on the projects that we do, we sort of say, something new, I really know how to do this. I am not willing to experiment, it's too risky, it may fail. It may not be exactly the way I think it could get. And somehow we find all the excuses that make us really not change the way we do the things we want to do. And then somehow when we have a moment of reflection, we realize that actually we are not changing the world. We just joined the establishment. We are keeping the status quo. So if we really want to change the world, there must be a way to do it, right? It's not like the world is changing one way or the other. Emily said how timber can change it. So how can we approach it? The recipe for it is simple and difficult at the same time, because whenever you ask someone doing the big things, they say, think different. What does it mean? How can we, so used to thinking the same way, start thinking different? One way, so there are many ways and there's no one recipe for that, but one way which I find extremely inspiring for myself is to start working with people who come from different domains. And sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes you basically get to a point where you cannot really communicate because you use the same words and you have a different meaning there. But fortunately, me being a designer, I find a common vocabulary with architects. So I would like to tell you about two projects that I've done with students and alumni of your university, of the University of Technology here in Gliwice, which made all of us think different. So the first project happened in 2012. We had exactly 7 days. We got invited into a small town, or a village really, nearby Częstochowa, which is called Mstów. And the local government invited us to rethink the way this community should develop. So we've been a bunch of people, 10 or 12 exactly, 2 experts, one from architecture, one from design, 5 design students and 5 architecture students. And we came to a village where people were scared of us. You can imagine that whenever we tried to approach them, that they would run away from us. They wouldn't want to talk to us. And we were supposed to think of how this community should change so it can be a good community for their citizens, but also a good community for the tourists and visitors who come to this place. So what we did, we combined the forces and the skills and the tools from the domain of architecture and design. We ran user studies, we mapped the local space, we ran workshops, which were both architecture workshops and design workshops. We talked to a lot of people. We created design alternatives and we showed them to the people and we asked them, what would you like to get? So we didn't really force these people to come up with their ideas. We were presenting them with some ideas that came to us. And what was a very, very interesting thing was that we presented them with 2 sorts of ideas. We presented them the ideas which were easy and cheap to develop, and we presented them with ideas which were long-term and rather more expensive. For example, we came up with an idea of creating an open-air cinema in one of the backyards of the local culture center, but the other idea, the opposite idea was to come up, we came up with was to create a space with a community cafeteria connected to the local library. And when we went to the people and asked them, what would you like to get? Their first reaction was, okay, we would like to have something quick and cheap. But when they thought about it for a moment, they realized that actually, no, they don't want a quick and cheap fix. They want a sustainable development of their community. So they want to invest in things and actually make the lasting change in the community over there. And you might imagine, like I already said, that there were students and us, but it was really a bunch of young people, not experts, not people who would say, okay, I know how it should be. Actually, I think that none of us, neither of the two experts that were there, knew what we were supposed to do and how we were supposed to do. But we were willing to learn from each other and create something quite unique for the community. So the good thing from this entire experience was that the local government took some of these ideas and, for example, they developed a celebration of an apple, which is, so this place is known for its orchards, and basically they created an apple day, which became a local celebration that keeps on running every single year from that point in October. So fast forwarding a little bit to 2016, I was happily collaborating with big companies in Warsaw, helping them to think about user centricity and how they should change their business so they can focus on their customers, when I got a phone call. I got a phone call from a friend who said, Warsaw University is looking for a crazy person. And, you know, it might be you. I said, okay, that sounds interesting. So what's the deal? What's the project? What's the thing that they are asking for? So the Warsaw University got a huge grant, governmental grant, and they are supposed to develop new spaces at the university. They are supposed to build new buildings. But they don't want to build new buildings. They want to change the culture of the university using the spaces and the buildings as a tool to push this culture through the organization. So basically, what I was asked for was to come as a designer, not an architect, and help the university envision the buildings they want to have for their campuses. And basically, like I said, the phone call was about looking for a crazy person. The craziness was in the fact that I got exactly 14 days to run my second project. And the project was to redesign or come up with a concept for one of the university buildings, which is the building for neophilology in the Warsaw suburb Powiśle. So if you don't know this building, this is the building that has been designed by Apa Kurłowicz architecture studio in 2006. It was designed, but the university didn't have the money to build it. So after some time, the university got some money, and they managed to build the first part of it, which is 1/3 of the building. The building is standing there for the last four and a half years. So we actually had a chance to see how the building works and what things should change. So the task that we were put forward to do was to look at the current space and think of how the space that doesn't exist yet should be improved in terms of the spaces, but also the facilities. So it can make students want to be there, to make people from the outside feel welcome to come to this building, to make people work in transdisciplinary teams, to make people want to innovate there. And you have to know that this building is not an experimental building. This is a traditional educational building. There are no labs, or almost no labs. This is more like classrooms and offices for scientists, for researchers. So we had this incredible deadline. One other important thing is the thing has about 25,000 square meters and 140 meters length. So you can imagine the challenge that we were facing in this project, and we only had 14 days. And by the way, that was not the last challenge of this particular project. The last challenge was that we were supposed to design it in the participatory way. So we were supposed to get people who were users or future users of this building, invite them over and listen to their needs and their dreams about how this building should look like. So how can you do that? How can you make people imagine a building which is supposed to, first of all, appear or like kind of enter their lives in 4 years, and also outlive them? Because like this building, like many university buildings, it's not supposed to be there for 10 years or 20. It's supposed to be there for 100 or 200 years. So how can you make the space fit the needs of people who are going to study there in 200 years? Are there going to be a university in 200 years in the first place? So we started with workshops. But this workshop was a specific workshop. We didn't ask people to come and tell their dreams and their expectations towards this building as of today. We asked them to envision this building in the year 2025, so 10 years from 9 years from now. And they were asked to think of how this building could be a successful building in 10 years. It was a very interesting exercise because many of these people realized that what they wanted for themselves right now was not really something that would make this building successful. So suddenly they had to face the fact that their particular needs of a space, my own room, my own lab, my own secretary room or something like this is not something that's going to make this building great. It was a very, very difficult realization for many of them. But on the other hand, some of the people who typically would not be heard by the others deciding on how those buildings look like, they had a feeling that finally, for the first time, someone has listened to them. And of course, many of you are designers and architects. You know that people cannot imagine spaces and they cannot envision spaces. So what we did, we took another week and we came up with 3 alternative solutions, 3 alternative concepts of how this building could feel like and look like and be like in the future. And we ran another workshop. We created mock-ups. You can see the mock-up on the photo. And we are telling the stories about those buildings and saying, okay, they have a philosophy. They have a way of functioning and a way of making people feel in them. And we are asking people, okay, you have those 3 options. Please let us know which one would make you feel good. So based on the data that we collected, we could say that some of the solutions were really good and interesting, and some of them were maybe too experimental or maybe too crazy for the people who are supposed to live there. And the last thing that we did, we created a booklet with recommendations for the architecture bureau saying what sort of things should be there. And the things that we envisioned for this building were the huge staircase and the huge hall in the middle of the building, which is supposed to be a heart of the building, with spaces for students to sit there, to enjoy themselves, to have places for individual work and for the group work, which are not supervised by lecturers. Another thing that we envisioned is that there's an open library, actually an open reading space where students can come and take the books and study there and then leave the books and leave. We also envisioned that the first floor would be the floor only for students. So there would be classrooms and spaces for students with social spaces where they can have their kitchenettes and they can warm up their food. Everybody's asking me who's going to clean them. I don't have an answer for that yet. But basically to get those spaces which can be sealed from the lecturers because apparently this is a huge need of the students. And the next floor is the floor for the students or for administration. So the students can go and deal with many different cases that they have, and also the employees can go and deal with the different cases that they have. And we wanted the people in administration to collaborate together so they are actually able to solve the problems better. And finally, the third floor was the floor for the scientists, with labs, with open spaces, with small spaces where they can sit with their students and their PhD students, spaces where they can sit alone and also where they can sit together with other researchers and work together. So these are all our dreams for this building. It may not sound big, but I think that for many Polish universities, this is actually a huge change in culture. And this is what we were asked for. We were asked to come and think of a change of a culture. Because the thing is that, we tend to, by our expert mind, we tend to create problems sometimes. And we don't create them based on bad intentions. They are rarely bad intentions. But basically we think that somehow what we know and what we think is the thing that applies to everyone and is the best solution for everyone. And in order to, Albert Einstein said that we cannot solve problems by using the exact same tools that we used when we created them in the first place. And for me, having these collaborations with architects, with people from different domains, is something that helps me to kick myself out of my status quo and start thinking differently. So I have a question for you. When was the last time that you did something for the first time?